Hello, everyone. My name is Julianne Meyer. I am the host of Own Your Wellness. And woo, has it ever been a day for me? I just finished paying off my car and it broke. And it cost more to fix it than what it's actually worth. So today has not been the most fun day, but today's guest is going to be fun. And I'm excited to speak with her. Her name's Annette Castillo. Let's bring her on. Annette, welcome to the show.
Hi, Julianne. Hopefully we can turn this day around.
I know, right? So, I came this close because I was like crying my eyes out. And then I was like, in the grant to canceling. And then I'm like, in the grand scheme of things, it's a freaking car. Who cares?
It's helpful to keep things in perspective. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Plus, knowing you and how hard it is to get you here, I was like, there's no way I'm canceling. So not everybody's familiar with you. So I'd love for you to share a bit about yourself and your own wellness journey.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to thank you so much for having me on Own Your Wellness. I really appreciate your time. My wellness journey began back in college. I went to nursing school, and I had an amazing professor that opened my eyes to sexual wellness, sexual health, and just being open and honest. And I was able to meet her at her office hours, and we would have long conversations. And I had parents that had never really talked to me about anything. So I was just really, my mind was blown, like, wow, I can talk to an adult about these things that I've been dealing with on the inside. And so then once I started working as a nurse, I went into the school district. I worked at Hogue for a little while, and then I went into the school district and saw the need for kids having that same experience. They don't have anyone to talk to. They have a lot of questions. They're starting, especially preteen, adolescent, they're starting to get into questions of, why is my body changing? Or, why do I have these feelings? And they had no one to talk to. So I went into the classroom to do some of the teaching, and I realized it was awesome. And I loved doing that. But then they would go home and they wouldn't have anyone to talk to. They could come into my office but I wanted to, I was support for them, but they didn't have support at home. So about 8 years ago, I opened this company. It's called Sensitive Solutions. And I brought in the preteen and the adolescent age group. Those are my clients. But I also brought in the parent, and that provided that communication bridge. So, they get the information from me, but then when they walked out of the class, they had already had the conversation with their parents. So they were able to talk about it when they got home. So they could build their own sexual wellness or, education and have a healthy life. So.
No, I love that, because I'm just thinking about my experience with my mom and how she basically threw a book at me and was like, here you go. And it was like, okay, I understand how a sperm, and an egg meet and all that, but that didn't really explain anything besides the science behind it. It sure would have been nice for,
It's so funny, Julianne. That's just every time I have a parent in my class, they say that same story. They always say, my parent threw a book at me and that was all I got. So you are not out of the norm. I think.
Well, I think too, I could sense my mom's uncomfortableness. I could feel her just, not even wanting to answer questions if I had them, because she was so, I don't know, there's such a shame or taboo. It's part of a human experience. It should never be like that. So I just appreciate really what you do, and that you saw a need and that you're so willing to, step in there and bridge that gap, because it's not that maybe I'm speaking out of turn, and please correct me if I am. Do you notice that it's not that parents don't want to help their children? It's more like they just don't know how, and they weren't even, they were throwing a book at them.
That's exactly it. Actually, there is a lot of research that supports it. Depends which study you read, but
Mhm.
anywhere between 80 to 93% of parents want their children to have sex education, and they
Mhm.
want the schools to do it, which is interesting because that shows what you're talking about. It's that comfort level of, I don't, and part of it might be education because they didn't get the education, so they don't really
Mhm.
know how to explain it or what's going on. But they do want their kids to have it. They just don't know how to do it. That's exactly your point.
So what do you find is one of the biggest misconceptions in the communication part of, between the kids and the parents? Like, do they maybe, for example, the kid or the parents think it would be really hard to speak to the kids about it? Or what do you find to be the biggest misconception?
It's funny. I'm writing a book right now because that is the number one question I get from parents of how do I start this? How do I start this
Mhm.
talk? And ideally, going back to when a parent had a newborn or a toddler, it's that conversation starts at those moments. But
Mhm.
if you're already have a 10-year-old or a 12-year-old or a 14-year-old, it's not too late to start the conversation. Um, I think it's the anxiety, not only from the parent, but also for the child or
Mhm.
the preteen adolescent. They're feeling anxious. They want the information. They don't know how to ask it. And then the parent is feeling anxious. So both parties are anxious. So it's kind of communication breakdown when you have two anxious people trying to communicate. So my recommendation is to bring up teachable moments. So those would
Mhm.
be when you're driving in the car, and maybe you're listening to them talking to their friends, or maybe they ask you a question that kind of leads into something that's a little uncomfortable. I think one of the best examples is watching movies. When you're watching movies with your kids, and there's those awkward moments in movies where something needs to be explained,
Mhm.
or even just looking at a healthy relationship in a
Mhm.
movie, or an unhealthy relationship. Parents can have that time to explain, this is an unhealthy relationship, and if anyone were to do this to you, you'd want to notify me, or whatever that moment is. That teachable moment is extremely helpful and gets the conversation going.
It does. And, I just think too about how my mom never used proper names for anything.
Yep.
What's wrong with using the proper name? I mean, to feel how uncomfortable she was made me uncomfortable in my own skin.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that that's what any parent wants for their children.
No, and that's what I was referring to. I mean, ideally, when you have children, you start at the very beginning and you label things what they are. An arm is an arm. Well,
Mhm.
you don't want to give it a funny, or a genitalia a funny name. You call it what it is. And you're right. I think that kids pick up on that it's, not, there's some kind of shame or stigma to it when it starts to get another name. So just call it what it is. If you're a new parent, just starting with not making it a big deal of like, okay, this is this is your vagina, or this is, call it what it is. So the
Mhm.
anxiety isn't sensed from the very beginning.
Exactly, because it's just normal. And I mean, I understand too how little kids repeat things and how that might be slightly uncomfortable. But at the same time, I think I'm just speaking because I have so many kids these days. I would think though that I would rather my kid be screaming out something like vagina than, who cares ultimately?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's hopefully what we're shifting into. I think we're getting there because our generation. I'm a little older than you are, but our generation, we got the book thrown at us, or no conversation, and we got nothing. And I think now there is more acceptance in having these conversations. I'm surprised, just in my own local community, I've taught over 1,200 families. So I think that it's becoming more of a comfortable and acceptable thing to sit down with your child and talk to them, because they do get exposed to so much more than we ever did at an earlier age. So that conversation really is crucial.
Well, I keep on thinking too about how the internet, I mean,
Oh
how much
yeah.
information are they getting that's probably, not necessary. I would rather instill in my children things that I want them to know that are accurate, as opposed to them going and figuring things out on their own and maybe getting the wrong information.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, there's a high number of 9-year-old boys and girls that get exposed to pornography on the internet. I believe it's like 85% just on accident. They're not searching for it, but
yeah.
it's just on accident. So they are seeing things that we just didn't get exposed to, and need conversations,
Mhm.
to kind of navigate them through what they've seen or what they've heard.
Do you think that that there should be some sort of support in general for parents to get together so that they can sort of, I don't know, have a conversation like, hey, I had this conversation with my kid, and how would you handle this? Or how could is it okay to say, I don't know the answer to your child, and then maybe go ask?
Yes. So I love that you're saying this, because this has been something that I've always felt extremely passionate about. And I don't know how to start it, or how to form groups like these. But
Mhm.
when you have children that are toddlers or newborns, there are different support groups for moms,
Mhm.
not so much for dads, but for moms. And they all get together and they talk about diapers and behaviors and timeouts and strategies that you're doing
Mhm.
with your children. And as your children get older, 10, 11, 12, those groups tend to go away.
Mhm.
And a lot of it, I think, is because people or parents sometimes feel ashamed or embarrassed that they're
Mhm.
having issues with their children, that their teenager is depressed,
Mhm.
or having sex at an early age, or doing drugs or alcohol, or has an eating disorder. And so people try to cover it up, like, oh, my, everything's great, and
Yeah.
they're studying hard and going to college, and in reality, we all know that we're human, and that we're all dealing, even our children are dealing with things, friendships and all kinds of relationship challenges,
Mhm.
and we don't support each other. We pretend that it's not there. And I would love to change that. I just don't know how to do that yet. That's
Well, we're putting it out there, so that's the
yes.
first step. I think that that's really important because, I think too about, the bullying aspect of things. And, now with cell phones and
Mhm.
sexting and all of that, and kids not understanding that, hey, if I send a picture of, my breast to my boyfriend, does it mean he's not going to show it to everybody else, or it's not going to go on the internet and be up there forever? They don't understand that. They don't have the mental capacity to understand that yet. I mean, maybe intellectually, but not on a deeper level. What would you recommend for parents to, help them? Because you can't tell a kid no. They're automatically going to be like, oh, yeah.
I know. The minute you tell them no, they go and do it,
Yep.
right? So that's a great question. That's one of my classes that I teach,
Okay,
because there's
perfect.
such a huge need. I do a social media, electronic safety and awareness class as a set of some of my 6th grade and older classes, because kids are getting phones at such an early age.
Mhm.
And we do talk about these things of, don't, you can, even if you receive a picture of someone who's sending a body part or they're naked, you can get in trouble for that.
Mhm.
And a lot of people don't know that. Kids don't know that. Parents don't know that. So
Child
that is
pornography. Yeah.
yeah, it's child pornography. Yeah. And even if you receive it and don't ask for it, you
Yeah.
can be just as,
Yeah,
liable for it.
exactly. Well,
So
that's something that I don't think about. The only reason why I even thought about it was from like Law and Order.
oh
The
yeah.
TV show.
Well, it's real. It's real. I mean, you bring up the bullying aspect, and that is 100% real. By the
Mhm.
time a child is in 6th grade, 90% of them have been bullied in some, online type of bullying, not face to face, rather, either through social media or texting. They used to have little group apps where they would come together and there would be bullying there as well.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents aren't aware of it. And
Yeah.
it's because that we have to have our kids tell us that these things are going on. And so it's really important that they sit down and talk to them and say, hey, come to me, let's talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
And I can support you and I can help you. I think sometimes parents are worried that, I think you were bringing this up a little earlier, that they're worried that they don't have the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. I mean, even when I'm teaching classes, I don't have the answer. And I do this for a living. I always get stumped every once in a while. So you can always just say, it's a great question. I will look into it. I don't have the answer, but this is important. And I definitely am going to get you the answer. One tool that I recommend is, if the comfort level is difficult,
Mm-hmm.
one way to mitigate that there's no conversation and to improve communication is through a journal. And so kids can keep a journal and they can write their question down in their journal. They can put it under their parents' pillow before they go to bed. Then, parents can read it and then answer the question and then put it back under their pillow. And that's a way of, hey, I'm not so comfortable talking face to face with this.
Mm-hmm.
Or even, it might be even a time factor. Like I've got too much homework. I just jot this question down. I don't want to get into a big, long conversation. But that's a good way to communicate in a, just support each other, but not have that conversation. I mean, obviously conversation is ideal, but.
Yeah, obviously. But I mean, if you're not that comfortable, like you said, or you're not necessarily that close, then it would be nice to be able to ask that. And there would still be that safety, and because I know for me, like as a child, I was always more concerned. I mean, I grew up in sort of an abusive household. So I was always really concerned with how, paying attention to how my mom and my stepdad were acting and reacting. So I always took on like their emotions too. So to not have to do that would have been really great. I could still ask, but not have to worry about how they were going to react to my question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it takes the stress out of it a little bit, or the anxiety. And it's a great way to just take off with those conversations. It's a good way to start them, the beginning of them, and then you can come together and talk about
exactly things. It breaks the ice.
Yeah.
The great icebreaker. I love that idea. That's a really good one. So you mentioned that you have a program I'm sorry, can you explain again? Because I'm popping up your website so people can reach out to you directly, but I'd love for you to share what they can find and like what it looks like to work with you.
So I have health education classes. My ages of kiddos are anywhere from around 9 all the way up to 16. And I have several classes, and you can pick and choose which classes you want to do, but I also have a recommended set and recommended classes for certain ages. So ages, 9, 10, 11 are just kind of the basic puberty. We also go over healthy decision-making, family values, goal setting. Goal setting is a huge life skill, and especially when you're going to go through puberty or going through adolescence, learning how to write goals down, short-term goals, long-term goals, and put a plan in place. We talk about that in my classes. That kind of keeps them on track so they don't make bad decisions, and they know where they're going, and they put the plan in place. So I start with those skills and then move into puberty and, the reproductive system and how it works for both boys and girls. And again, I have the parent there. So there's a lot of group discussion and then also just one-on-one discussion, because my job is to give the information, but every family has different family values and they want to instill different things in their children. That's not my job. So I give them the information, and then I let the parent take it and say, okay, this is what our family does, or this is what we want you to do, or how can we support you with this? So those are some introductory classes. And then by the time they get into 6th grade, 7th, 8th, we get into some more serious topics. So, obviously the basic sex education, how the sperm and egg come together. We talk about healthy relationships, how to foster a healthy relationship and how to get out of an unhealthy one, because all of us have been through multiple unhealthy relationships, and trying to figure out how to cut bait in a healthy way is a skill. It really is a skill. I have refusal skills, how to say no. We talk about sexually transmitted infections, birth control methods, just an introduction to those, how to grow into a healthy and successful man or woman. So we have conversations about that. What does that look like? And that kind of goes back to goal setting, and who you can talk to and who is your support system to get you there. And then I also do social media, like I talked about before, and electronic awareness. So gaming and, Snapchat, all those different apps, we have a discussion about how to be safe. So there's lots of topics.
Yeah. And I love this because it's not just, I don't know, it just seems like what you are providing is so needed. I think about like when I was in school, and probably, there are things that I learned, a lot of the things I've never used. I've never, it was things I could have, learned that would have been great were goal setting, for example. Or how to leave an unhealthy relationship. These are things that everybody deals with that nobody really talks about. So it sounds like you're, I don't know why that would be uncomfortable, but it seems like it's something that people just don't talk about. Is that something?
No, I mean, the schools are directed towards the testing, and a lot of that has gotten removed out of schools. And actually, sex education, there was an act that was passed in 2016 that requires comprehensive sexual education in California schools, but it's only once in high school and once in middle school. And again, the parent isn't there either, but they are getting some information. But most of it has been removed from the curriculum in schools. And it's really sad because a lot of them, and it's not not the fault of a parent, because a parent doesn't have the skills to talk about these things. So the kids are just not really getting anything at all. So.
Except from each other, they're talking to each other
and the internet. Yes. When I have a client who's a little unsure, maybe they say, well, I don't know about talking about these subjects so early on. Maybe it's too early. I always reinforce that with, if they're not getting it from me and from you, then they're getting it online, and you don't want your children to be getting that information online. You want to be able to help guide them and navigate them through. So,
also, and I don't know how you feel, and this is why I'm asking, is personally, I don't feel like having the education makes kids go have sex or anything like that. I feel like it makes them understand themselves more. But what are your feelings?
I don't believe that, but there are many parents who do believe that. It is a challenging field to be in because it has a lot of opinions. It's more important than ever right now, especially as we're looking, and I don't want to get into politics too much. I'm just going to throw this in with the, everything going on with abortion. So sex education is crucial. These kids need it. So I've lost track of my thoughts. Sorry. I got into politics for a second. I'm like, no, don't do it. So I lost track of my thought, but, so sorry. Go ahead, Julia.
No, we were just talking about how, how crucial it is, and how, like, there's a lot of opinions about it. And, it's really important to have this education, because it's more than just, sperm meets egg. It's like, okay, that's all fine and dandy, but why am I feeling this way? Is this normal? Do other people feel like this? Am I weird? I would have loved to have known that maybe what I was feeling and experiencing in my body was totally normal.
Yeah. Yes.
Or not. What if it isn't? What if it isn't normal? Then that would have been nice to know too.
And I think our go-to people, we either keep it inside or we talk to our friends. And our friends don't necessarily have the right information.
No,
And
they're
so
not.
parents are the perfect person to help guide them. And I talk about that in the classes with the kids. It's like, please come to us because we want to help you get through it. We've been through it before. We know it's awkward. We know things come up, and we want to help you get through it because on the other end, we want you to be this successful man and woman. And one of the challenges is these kids, we know that their frontal lobe doesn't develop until they're well into their 20s. So they really need an adult or some kind of mentor that's going to help them because they're just not capable. I mean, I see it in my own kids. I forgot to mention that I'm not only teaching puberty, I'm living it because I have 5 kids in the house.
You know what you
all one of them's an adult. He made it through, but I have 4 that are all going through puberty at the same time. And so I'm learning about puberty as well. And as much as I talk to them and I'm super open and transparent, and they still, because of that frontal lobe, they still don't make the best decisions every time. You know, I told you about this. We talked about this. So, I mean, it's not really completely their fault because they just don't have that organizational part of their brain working yet, or the rational part of their brain.
And that's where your patience comes in as a parent. You're testing it.
Yes, I've told you this 20 times.
See, Annette said that it wasn't my fault.
Yes, you can blame it on me.
Well, on that note, we do need to go to a commercial break. So we're going to be back in just a minute. Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
For those of you who are watching us live, thank you for being here. As I mentioned, it is time for those commercials. So we will be back in just a moment.
When drug or alcohol addiction take over, things begin to disappear. Your friends, your family, and eventually, you. Recommended by Dr. Phil, New Method Wellness can help get your life back with individualized treatment plans for dual diagnosis clients. New Method Wellness provides the most highly credentialed treatment in a safe and welcome environment. Call New Method Wellness for your free consultation and ask about our national accreditations. Together, we can put the pieces back together.
Welcome to E360 TV, the live streaming and on-demand destination for influential voices and enlightened audiences. We offer trending, grassroots, and purpose-driven content across a diverse range of interests. E360 TV is more than just watching programs. We offer the ability to interact with live shows connecting audiences to real, authentic influencers and storytellers while streaming to millions of devices. Real experiences. raw conversations. One destination for it all. E360 TV.
Welcome back, everyone. If you're just joining us now, you are watching Own Your Wellness. I am Julianne, and today's guest is Annette. Let's bring her back on. Welcome back.
Hi, everyone.
So, something that I was thinking about during the commercial break that I'd love to touch on is, the idea of having the open communication with your children about whatever it may be, not only, sex, but like the bullying, because I know for me, bullying was huge. I don't know that I would have made it through childhood if I experienced my childhood with the internet, because my bullying was pretty extreme, and it probably wasn't anything compared to what kids get now. So are there ways that, that you found that, like maybe like the Notebook, for example, to try and open up conversations with your children so that they feel safe to talk to you, besides going through their stuff to find out what's going on with them?
Yes. I think there's a book that I read that actually helped me with this, and it'll come to me, and maybe if there's another commercial, I'll look it up. But one of the things that is a challenge with parenting when you're trying to communicate with, especially a teenager, like a preteen or a teenager, is creating a safe environment. Because most of the time, I mean, let's be real, we're usually telling our kids to pick up their clothes and do the dishes, and, everything is get off your computer. And, we're kind of the big bad wolf in some sense. And so creating an environment where kids will open up is a challenge. It's really hard because they see you as someone who's telling them what to do basically all the time. And kids do respond to other mentors. So if you have family, if you have other people, coaches, that can be helpful because they will tend to open up because there's a little less threatening environment. However, the point is we want our kids to open up to us. So it's a technique of presenting information. We have a tendency to lecture our kids. Kids don't respond to lecture. If you want to lecture them about their academics, fine. But when it comes to relationships, or it comes to bullying or mental health, you can't lecture. They just shut down. They completely shut down. And I learned this, and the author's name is Josh Shipp. He's amazing. He specializes in adolescence, and I'll get you the name of the book in a minute. And these are techniques that I learned from him. So this goes credit to him. But really just instead of lecturing, listen. It's really easy for us to say, well, they'll like a certain music. And like, let's say it's rap. And we say, oh, that music is terrible. There's bad words in that music and it's misogynistic and, whatever. We start going on our rant as to like why we don't want our kids to listen to rap. But really they identify with rap music in some way. Maybe they're getting bullied at school and it calms them down or soothes them, or there's some kind of emotional attachment to the music. So the trick is to pull back, stop the lecture, stop saying, well, I don't want you listening to that music, and just listen to why they're interested. What's their emotional attachment to it? And just be curious. I know that seems to be coming up a lot lately when we talk about healthy relationships and just being curious and asking questions. It's the same with your kids. Instead of judging them and making them feel judged, just try to find out why they feel the way they do, why they're friends with the people that they're friends with, why they like the music that they like. Get interested in their life and respect their life instead of trying to tell them how to live their life, which is so hard. And as a parent, you say, okay, you're going to Stanford, you're doing this, or, you're doing your laundry, and it's really challenging to do. It's challenging for me to do because I have the tendency to want to lecture my children.
Well, I mean, especially when you know better.
I know. I'm learning. I'm a work in progress. No one's perfect, not even the teacher over here.
I totally get it though, because I just think about how many, like I said, I don't have kids of my own, but when I worked in addiction recovery, you just got to let people figure it out sometimes and just be there for them to talk to and, listen. And that's really all they need. And so it's not, that different, I don't think.
No.
And then what are your thoughts about maybe sharing personal stories, like about when you were a kid, that maybe your child wouldn't feel so alone?
That's tricky.
It is.
That's a territory you dance in a little bit. I do, when it comes to mental health issues, I think sharing is really important, referencing your experiences, because when you open up and you share, you really do gain connection and understanding. So it is helpful. But there is that fine line of like, oh, I smoked marijuana when I was 14 years old. I don't think that's very helpful. You really need to weigh, what are they going to get out of this? Because eventually they might use it against you if they find out that you've broken some rules, and they might do it, or they might just use it against, they may not do it, but they might use it against you. So you really need to weigh. That's why it's a delicate dance. But kids do appreciate personal stories. So as much as you can share without, jeopardizing any kind of future, oh, you did it, so I can do it, conversation is extremely helpful.
I like the idea of sharing about mental health experiences, because that could be a really lonely place to be, especially if you're being bullied. It just feels like you're the only person and everybody's against you. And, I like that idea of, this is what I did, or, this is how, I can relate, because, well, I don't know if you'd want to say that, because I just imagine kids being like, you don't even know.
Yes, they will say that. Things are different. I get that. I think times are different now, Mom.
Yeah, exactly. When you were a kid.
I do hear that a lot. But things don't change, really. I mean, there are new challenges with the internet. Those things have changed, but
the feelings are the same. That's the thing. The emotions are the same. The experiences might be slightly different, but it's still human.
Yeah.
So,
human experience that doesn't change. And as we know, mental health is such a huge issue right now with our children and preteens and adolescents. We really need to sit down and talk with them about it.
What would you recommend for a parent to do if their kid is being bullied?
Just to start that conversation. Try to support them as much as possible. If you can get to the problem, it depends on how old your child is. So if they're young, it is possible to go to the parents of the bully and talk to the parents. That doesn't always go well, but it can. I have seen it work. Yes. Yeah. As they get older, that doesn't really work. So offering support, getting your preteen, adolescent into counseling, somebody to talk to aside from you to just kind of wrap them around, wrap around them is really important. I am a huge advocate for counseling or, therapy of any sort when you have an adolescent, because these teenage years are really difficult, and having somebody else to talk to is really important. The challenge is finding the right person, somebody that they connect with, and somebody who's not going to do extra damage. They have to be, real reputable, but definitely talking to someone, support groups, Those things are all wonderful support for kids to open up and talk, because otherwise it just festers, and then they get more depressed, and then it can get really bad with suicide and those kinds of things.
Exactly. And that brings me to my next question, actually, is, ultimately we do want our kids to be able to open up to us and share their experiences, but that's not always the case. I mean, it just isn't. So what are some signs that parents can look for that maybe things aren't okay in their child's world? Is there anything that's universal?
There are universal signs. Either lack of sleep or sleeping too much.
Even if they're a teenager. Sorry.
I know, when you have a teenager, that's hard to gauge. Not taking care of themselves with hygiene, not showering, lack of appetite, not eating at all. Being completely withdrawn, not coming out of their room. I know that we like to offer them privacy because we want to be respectful, but with them withdrawing in their room is a challenge. Being on their phone, for females, not so much for males. Males, it's more gaming. For females, it's more social media. Getting them off of those, especially for females with social media, because they're on TikTok or Instagram comparing themselves and becoming more depressed. If they're withdrawn and then they're looking at the outside world through social media, they become even more depressed.
Thinking that that's real.
Yeah, they do. And that's another message I'd say in my classes, is that, people try to portray an image. It's not really who they are. They're not posting that they're crying in their bedroom. For whatever reason, they tend to post things that, oh, my life is so great. And kids need to keep that in perspective. And again, because of that frontal lobe not being developed, they have a hard time managing that. But yeah, getting the support is huge.
Yeah. So, something that I was thinking about too is back to when I was working in addiction recovery. When you are in an inpatient program, you spend 30 days without your cell phone. And I'm telling you, I mean, I've seen people go through withdrawals for heroin, meth, you name it. But the phone withdrawal is ridiculous.
It's real. It is real.
So real. Oh my goodness. So, I mean, what are your thoughts about, I know it's a personal preference for everybody and how they're going to, raise their family and things like that. But if they see an issue with their children and their phone, which more than likely they're going to, is there anything that they can do to help that situation?
It's really a challenge, and the research out there shows that if you remove their phone, they become. There's some research that shows that if you remove their phone, they become more depressed, because that is their lifeline to their social world. So again, here we are with that delicate dance of putting limits on the phone. In my classes, we talk about creating contracts that will limit, so everybody signs off and everyone's aware of, okay, once you get your homework done, you're only allowed on your phone for 2 hours. Or maybe you can't use it past 9 o'clock, or in my house, phones are not allowed in the car, because that's where we can talk. And I feel like when they're, zoned out and withdrawn, I lose that teachable moment, those moments. But yeah, it's taking the phone away. It's hard. Taking the game away, it's hard. But I think limits is really the answer. You can't take it completely away, because then they become more withdrawn.
Yeah, exactly. And then that trust that they have for you isn't going to be as strong, because you did that to them. So,
and especially if you're taking their social life away, they don't have any way to communicate with anybody if you take their phone away.
Exactly.
It's such a different world, Julianne. Like we picked up the telephone and called people.
I remember having to run to get the phone before they hung up.
Yeah, so those answering machines. But no, their whole social world is in these little
Well, even
electronics.
mine. I mean, think
Yes,
about how
me
much
too.
I rely on it for just about everything. It's ridiculous.
Yes.
So, I can't really say too much, but, and then, I mean, especially with COVID and everything else, I feel like people have even gotten more into their phones because
Mhm.
less social interaction in person. I mean, fortunately, we are starting to come out of that, but it doesn't mean the habits, goes away suddenly and,
Mhm.
well, you're here in front of me. So,
Yeah. And we know that there's more research coming out now that says that the brain does change, once you've
Mhm.
been on an electronic for a certain amount of time.
That's
You
right.
start releasing that dopamine and,
Mhm.
things, you start working at a lower level of your brain.
Uh-huh.
So yeah,
Scary.
yeah,
That
it's
is
real.
so
I'm
scary.
sure you know that from working in addiction.
Yeah, absolutely. And, just I think about how many similarities it is that kids struggle with as adults do that maybe, I mean, if they have addiction issues, sometimes, their mental, they're not as far along emotionally because of when their addiction started. But
Mhm.
gosh, I just feel like it's a universal thing. But obviously, with kids, they're like you said, their brains aren't even fully formed yet, so they're at this. I don't want to say disadvantage because that's not
Mhm.
fair, but they just need the extra help from somebody that's going to guide them and not take advantage of them. And so I just really appreciate everything that you do. I'm going to pop up your website again because I'm so glad you're here today. I'm really glad
Me
that we're having
too.
this conversation.
Me too. I
Yeah.
wanted to add one more thing because I know
Okay.
we've been,
We still have
this
a
has
little
been,
bit of time, but yeah, go
okay.
ahead.
Okay. I was, I know we've been talking about kids and
Uh-huh.
that's, my main passion, but I did something spurred out of all of these classes that I've been teaching and wanted to share it with your audience because I think it's pretty cool with it's not so much male. Well, maybe it could be male with the female audience, but all my moms, when I would talk about puberty and hormones and all those things, they said, Annette, when are you going to do a class on menopause?
Yes.
Because it's that kind of that same idea of like, well, by the time you get to be 50 you don't have a support group. All of us are going through the same thing. Let's
Yeah.
come together and talk about it and figure it out. So I did write a curriculum for menopause and putting a positive spin on menopause because I feel like there's so much negativity out there and stigma and so I'm trying to make it
Yeah.
into a positive kind of the next step in your life of freedom and
Mhm.
just it's a really good thing, and so that's my newest class. So it's for
I love that.
I'm teaching adults too.
I love that because I was because I'm like at that age, a perimenopausal age, and it's like nobody
It's
teaches you. Like I
no.
had no idea that menopause is that you don't have your period for an entire year, 12 months in a row, and like you don't even necessarily know until it's 12 months.
Yeah.
I mean that's a
No.
possibility, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, no one talks to us, just like when we were little. No one talked to us then. No one's talking to us now. So I'm going to change that.
I love that. I just think that's I don't think that there should be any shame when it comes to our bodies and where we are in our lives because they're amazing scientific, works of art, in my
They
opinion.
are.
And, how they self regulate and do all these amazing things. And it would just be really nice to have a better understanding and, appreciation for ourselves. Wouldn't you say?
Yes, I agree. And like you said, there's nothing to be ashamed, and it should be
Yeah.
an open conversation, no matter what age, 51,
Yeah.
10, so yeah, I
Exactly.
agree.
I
And we need
feel
to celebrate.
Yeah, I feel compelled to share this little piece of wisdom that I was taught by a mentor of mine. And, we were talking about um, not self acceptance, but self love and truly loving our bodies.
Mhm.
Because, most women in particular, since I'm one, I'm going to talk about women, like want to lose weight or be more muscular or, all these different things. And it's like we don't necessarily love ourselves as we are. And One of the things two things. One is, when was the last time you took really good care of something you didn't really respect or care for? And then you wonder why you're not losing weight, because you know what I'm saying? So there's that. But the part that I really wanted to say was that she said that I thought was absolutely fabulous was, why don't you take time and learn what the parts of your body actually do for you so that you can appreciate them?
I love that. That is brilliant.
Really brilliant, because
we don't do that.
We don't know. I mean, you need your big toe. Like, we needed to stand. People don't realize how much we use our toe to balance. It's like, who knew?
Appreciating your body and all the parts is really
everything and what they do. Yeah. I just thought that was a brilliant way to really start to appreciate the skin you're in.
You've only got one of them your whole life. You might as well.
I know there's no spare part. None of that business. We are almost out of time now. So is there anything else that you'd love to share before we wrap up today?
I don't think so. I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Well, good. It's all been gold. So,
but please visit my website or sensitivesolutions.net. You can contact me that way to sign up for the menopause class, get more information, host some classes if you are a parent. I'd love to, and I come to you to make it easy. So I come to your house and we do the group together. So just, come visit me and ask for more information. And I'd love to share that. And I'd love to teach as many families in the community, as many kids as I can. I also do have one online. I started doing some online programs. I have one right now for males. It's on the basic male puberty course, and you can get that on my website as well. And I'll keep you posted on that book. Hopefully I'll get that out there soon.
Yeah, well, this is going to be up indefinitely, so evergreen. So for people who are watching this and want her book, at some point, it's going to be available.
Yes. I will let you know. I will keep you posted.
Keep on coming back, right?
Yeah, I would love to. I would be honored.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much for being on the show today, Annette. It's been an absolute pleasure picking your brain and, hearing your wisdom. And I feel more comfortable even though I don't have any kids of my own to talk to about it. But, I just feel like if I can feel confident, then other people do. So thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to share what I do. It's hard sometimes for me to articulate exactly what I do. And so having the opportunity to do that and share it with your viewers is really special. I appreciate that. Thank you, Julia.
Amazing. All right. Well, have a great night, and we will see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
For those of you who are still here watching us live, I just want to let you know on what day is it? Today is Monday. So Thursday, that's what happens when you work from home. Sometimes you can't remember what day of the week it is. We have Frank Sinclair. He's going to be on the show. So make sure that you join us then. And until then, enjoy the rest of your week, and may your car work perfectly, because we all know mine isn't. Anyway, have a good one, and we'll see you on Thursday.